Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway, here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. Last week, we talked about business from the entrepreneur's perspective. So specifically small businesses and some of the challenges and points of view that are helpful for small business owners. Now, being a small business owner is not for everyone. It comes with certain mental, physical, financial risks that you're taking on a regular basis.
And that's just the plus side.
Not to discount all of the negatives that come with that too, right? The pressures and all of that as well. But a lot of people feel that they are just happier being an employee. They're happy to just kind of do their job, see where they fit within a greater system, and fulfill that responsibility. But we wanted to share today some ideas from an employer's perspective. So as a small business owner, what we're looking for and how that can help you as you're benefiting your own career and you're trying to assess and see what to do next as you project forward in your own life.
Yeah, so this is like part 2 of our handbook series. Last week talked about the business owner, the entrepreneur side. Now we're going to talk about what it's like being an employee and how to figure out how to make more money for yourself, how to make yourself more valuable and get yourself to the point where not only are you valuable, you are irreplaceable or very expensive to replace.
And I think that's it. I think that as an employee, when you start to really understand the type of company you're working for, what matters to them, what their focus is, you can assess your own skills and you can assess the objectives that they're measuring your performance against in a different way. So in a sense, even though you're an employee, you're thinking like a business owner. You're thinking like someone who's trying to maximize their profit. And in this sense, your profit is your ability to sell your services for the highest price. So I think the first place to start is just defining the company that you work for. Of course, there's small businesses, there's medium businesses, there's large companies, but different companies have drastically different philosophies and approaches that will determine what they value and what they view as important. So if I'm an employee looking at my output, I need to make sure that the company that I'm with is aligning with the philosophy that I'm bringing to the table, or if that's not going to change, that I'm choosing to align myself with them.
Yeah, part of this is like company culture. Part of this can also be the size of your company. It could be whether it is like privately owned, whether it's publicly traded, or it has been gobbled up by some sort of private equity firm. Then you are in lots of trouble. But it's figuring out where are your goals? What is the size of the company? What is the purpose of the company? And how likely are they to cut staff if they have a bad quarter?
Oh, geez. Well, and I think from our point of view, yes, there's lots of different lenses that you can use to evaluate a corporation. But from this point of view, I'm just going to cut it down to 2 metrics. Is the company client-centric or is the company profit-centric? And what I mean by that is as a small business gets larger, it tends to develop this funny little thing called a C-suite. And as soon as people become the leaders, get in charge, or they hire people specifically to make more money, make things better, and especially if a company gets big enough where they become publicly traded, it is easier to make that switch from client-centric, which is typically more of a small business mom and pop shop feel, where you really, really care about making that client as happy as possible, to a profit-centric motive, where now you're less concerned maybe about the client experience and more interested in output and efficiencies. And while output and efficiencies are good things, sometimes if you cut people out of the equation, it can be a little tricky to navigate.
Yeah, if you're not sure which situation you're in, just ask yourself, does my company have a marketing division?
Well, no, and it's trying to see, are they thinking about the end user of the product? Are they thinking about how to make their experience better? Are they thinking about how to have their customers leave happy and want to come back, and not just from the marketing sense, but from the sense of we care? Do the staff have the ability to make a client happy if something goes wrong, or to solve a problem if something goes wrong?
As opposed to how do we provide the base level of whatever service this is so it is technically called that specific service? How watered down can we make this coffee?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, no, but profit-centric companies are really about margins, right? So it's easy for your job to become just one little notch in that belt, or one little wheel in that hub that's spinning on the ongoing basis. And that's when things kind of lose touch. But if you're an employee working in that environment, you have to figure out, who are you supposed to please? Who is in charge of your promotion? Who is measuring your efficiency? Who is measuring what is considered to be a good job, and what is it being measured against? Because sometimes there's a misalignment between a job description and because what your manager or supervisor or his boss actually wants you to do. And spoiler alert, it's usually in a profit-centric company to either sell or produce more faster.
Yes, even if you hit your quota today, that quota will go up again next quarter. We've seen that with some people we know where they can hit all their quotas perfectly. All of a sudden, their quotas go up 20, 25%. And then the next year, it goes up another 20, 25%. The line must go up.
Well, it is. It's exactly it. And how do you distinguish yourself and differentiate yourself in that environment, right? How do you find something that is unique to you? I think in this marketplace where people are so replaceable, you need to be someone that sees, identifies, and solves a problem as much as possible, as opposed to just doing an output that could be done by anyone else in that chair at that point in time. I think the value is for the people that are thinking progressively and thinking forward in terms of solutions or efficiencies. And well, I mean, bosses, some will be more receptive than others about looking at new ways of doing things. In that same vein, if you can find ways to kind of cut down time and things that don't really matter and give more time to things that do, that enhances your value, because you're at the very least making your boss look real, real good.
Yeah, even in my personal experience, I found like my key to get ahead when I was on the employee side was just to show about a baseline of competence and some forward thinking and how things actually work. But yeah, just if you can hit that base level of competence, that already puts you head and shoulders above a lot of people.
Yeah, so if you've identified that it's your boss that's the person that you have to please, you've got to ask yourself if that person is the kind of person that wants to advance your career growth. Sometimes people, even the people that are put over us, hopefully to look out for our best interests, are more self-serving as well, right? And you don't want someone that thinks you perform so well that they want to keep you all to themselves and keep you for your own. So there is some risk there also. But what I really wanted to talk about today is to figure out, how do you make more money in a current role, at least from the perspective of the person who's paying the bills or paying the salaries, because not everyone wants to change careers. And not everyone is looking for a new job today. A lot of us have obligations. We have bills that we have to pay, and retraining, where it's kind of the pat advice that everyone gives and gets, it's not always feasible. So how do we make sure that where we're standing today has the opportunity that we need to move ourselves forward? And let's be honest, I mean, changing anything is hard. So we came up with some questions that we think can help you evaluate your current situation and hopefully see if you're in a place that offers the right opportunities and presents the right fit. And I will just kind of caveat that by saying, not all jobs are for the long term. Some really are a transition point where you're there to learn a skill, you're there to perform a specific service, and then you're ready to move on. And that's fine too.
Yeah, it's fine to have kind of like those little stepping stone things. Like when I kind of first got into the workforce, I got my first job. worked hard, took that starting wage, went somewhere else, just matched on that, increased, and it did that a few times, just kept kind of stepping up the income ladder, work hard, get a raise, use that baseline raise as negotiation to go get something else. So that is something you can do depending on what industry, your skill set, but that is something people do. You can only go so far at one place. So sometimes you have to jump over somewhere else and just kind of start the ladder all over again, but hopefully you get to start over at a higher baseline income threshold.
So let's start by looking at where you are now in the job and in the role that you're in now. Is this employer, is this industry, is this company in this sector, is this somewhere that you can see yourself grow over time? And is this somewhere that you can be happy? And if the answers to the question are anything other than yes, that's when we need a little bit more exploration. But starting with, how can I make the best of the situation that I'm in? And if I do identify that I do need a change, how can I still maximize what I'm doing now while I prepare to make that stepping stone move?
Yeah, another way you can look at it is, can this job give you the life you want or the experience you want, or even just the income that you need to kind of do the day-to-day? It's the first question is this job ticking the boxes I need? Is this job just the job that was available? Where are you with this? And is there room to grow? Is there room to move? Or do you need to start looking somewhere else, either a competitor or even another industry or type of work?
Well, that's it. And I think if your answer is no, it's narrowing in on why. What is it about it that you don't like? Is it something on the day-to-day? Is it something along the lines of a lack of career advancement? Is it something along the lines of a lack of training opportunity or skills development? Because if we're saying that this is a skills-based society that we're moving into, where the value that you bring to the table is you uniquely growing you, does that job provide that opportunity? So once you've identified that, yes, this is a job that I can work with for this particular period of time, whether that's a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, then you have to kind of distill down, what parts of this job don't I like? And is there anything I can do about that?
Well, I think the answer for some people is just the job altogether.
Yeah, well, and that could be the answer, right? It's trying to see, is there any room for navigation? Like, a lot of people with work from home have a lot more autonomy, but I understand that that's not an option for everyone. And I mean, a lot of jobs are still factory jobs where you really are just a cog in the wheel, and that's all it will be. And in that situation, your responsibility is really just identifying that that is where you are, and that is all that that particular job has to offer. So in that case, maybe it's just a paycheck. Maybe it's not a lifestyle, or maybe the lifestyle part of it is you like the hours that you get to work or something. Or you like the fact that you don't have to think quite so hard about problem solving. It's just a routine, physical, in and out type job.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. I did like a year or so working at a windshield washer fluid factory. Just stack the case, move the barrel, hope you don't explode. Stack the
Things did explode.
I think I mentioned this before. Yes, it did explode after I left. Or even just like worked at like a Petro-Canada gas station, running a cash register. Some of these things, it's just the job you take to kind of either fill the time, get some experience, or just trying to figure out where you're going to go after. Because I did some lousy jobs, and I did like 8 years at the Canada Post. Now I'm at Braun making all of the big brain investment decisions.
So, and that I think is another important thing. Even if you're in one of these rote jobs where you're just moving things around or pushing buttons or having basic interactions, your mind is still very much your own, and what you choose to plan and envision for yourself, and as you choose to kind of grow and challenge yourself, even when you're there, I mean, yeah, they can trap your body, but they can't trap your mind, kind of thing, right? You can still plan for the future. Yeah, in those situations. But I like to frame these conversations, when we're having these conversations, it's just trying to figure out how you got to where you are today. And a lot of people fell into their career by some version of a happy accident. Maybe they knew someone who opened the door. Maybe they applied to something that looked good at the time. And then you got comfortable. The salary was nice. It started to build a lifestyle. And then it got harder and harder to leave. So if you and I were sitting together and I said to you, well, what are you doing today? And you told me you wanted to change your careers, I would just ask what your journey had been so far. Had you started at a company slayed all the dragons and moved on? Or have you kind of been doing the same thing for a period of time and it's getting a little old and you're looking for a shift? This is where skills become so important to develop. And a different way of thinking is something that can really help you as you're trying to move forward. Because if everyone else is just punching that cash register in the same way or moving those boxes in the same way, and you start to look for efficiencies and you start to look for possibilities, maybe not with that particular employer, but those shifts in your mentality will start to create a new way of thinking that will help you see opportunities as they arise.
Yeah, and in this quest for efficiency, depending on your employer, you may or may not keep that efficiency to yourself. You can either show them the efficiency and make things better, or just don't tell anyone about it and just kick your feet up a little bit.
Jeez, valid point as well.
Always overestimate by about 20-25% of how long something's going to take.
Oh my goodness, eh? So let's move on to the next question. Will a new job really make you happier? And this is going to come from identifying the things in your first job that were not doing it for you. Was it a manager that you really didn't get along with? Was it someone else that was always taking credit for your work? Was it the lack of promotability where you could not move ahead or you felt like you really couldn't get ahead in that particular career? In those instances, those can all be very valid reasons to want to make a change.
Yeah, sometimes a bad boss can ruin a great job. So sometimes you do have to look for a competitor or something else to do that same work, because everyone has had like a bad boss experience.
But even in the bad boss scenarios, using a job, going over a job description and really distilling down the skills and the very industry specific things that you have learned that you can then speak to a new employer. Or even in that bad boss scenario, if it's possible to get another manager, or if it's possible to change departments, or if it's possible to look for ways to transfer those skills to something that's more palatable, maybe that's an option for you as well.
Yeah, and this is the big risk that some people take out against themselves, for themselves, to think, well, if I've hit my cap here, if I can't do anything else with this company, if my income is capped off, if I'm passed over for promotions because of other incompetent people who do or do not do anything worthwhile, what do I do? And sometimes there is that risk that it's time to move on.
Well, and let's talk about a scenario now. Let's forget the bad boss thing. Let's talk about a scenario where you are happy otherwise with that job, but you just need to make more money. Think about your replacement cost. Think about how when you are efficient in your job, when you've checked all the boxes in your job description and then gone beyond, when you've understood who you're reporting to, who you're really working for, what matters to them, and how to make them look good or make the company look more profitable or give the client the good end experience. Once you've done those things, you become so much more difficult to replace. And your value to that company that you've been providing a service to is higher, even if they don't admit it by unilaterally deciding to give you a raise or increasing your salary.
Yeah, I like to joke around with Christine that if I ever left, Ron, take 4 people to replace me.
He's not kidding. Probably take more. But that's the truth, right? The more ingrained you get into a business, especially a small business, the more valuable you are to the owner of that business because you now have a deep understanding of the process and the system and the culture. And that is hard to teach. And an employer is taking a gamble every single time they hire someone because they don't yet know, even if that new person looks great on paper and interviews well, how they'll actually fit into the culture or if they'll be able to perform to the standard that that employer needs. And if you're tried, tested, and true, and you're saying, you know what, hey, inflation is up. Here are the skills. I know I could make XYZ across the street. I don't want to go there, but is there something we could do? That's a very valid argument in this job market, where if you've shown that initiative and that problem-solving ability and you've gone that extra mile, my goodness, most employers, I know I certainly would, you'd want to pay someone to stay and to get that security of the consistency of the good value that you've provided year over year. Now, not all businesses are small businesses and not all organizations work like that, but a lot of them have ranges for different positions and different salaries. And if you don't know where you are on that salary range, or if you haven't really pushed the limit very far, it might be worth it to just kind of see where that is, see where you start getting resistance. And it's a sensitive topic, but it is the quality of life and all of the other financial implications for you of how much you can save, what your savings rate will look like, what your investments will look like over time, and how likely you are to hit your other goals. Those are all tied into how much money you can convince your employer to pay you as you increase your skills.
Yeah, this is where you kind of have to like be upfront and show what your value is, because a lot of employers will just kind of take your value for granted until you are gone. So this is about you leveraging your true value to the company, because hiring new people isn't cheap. Having to take current staff over to do training isn't cheap. And there is a break-even point months down the road. And often it can just be cheaper to give you that, what to be to them a nominal raise, but could be a good one for you, is it could be cheaper for the company in the long run. But you have to actively look at your own value and highlight it, and not just hope that one day someone will just look at you in the corner and say, hey, he's valuable. No, there is initiative required. And this is how some people end up getting constantly passed over for promotions, where you could have the more type A loudmouth bragging about their accomplishments that may not exist, while the hard workers just kind of keep to themselves.
Well, and maybe a controversial piece of job advice that I had heard recently was someone was basically saying they were encouraging people to take on larger and more important and more involved projects, right, at their current pay. And then when those projects were completed successfully, and when they've proven that they could take on that extra responsibility, and when they had actually taken the initiative to ask for those roles, after, at the next review or at that next checkpoint, just say, hey, you know what? Prior, I had been doing work at XYZ level and my pay had been this. Now I am capable, and I've shown this track record where now I can do work at a higher skill level. I'm freeing up people that are otherwise doing this job to do something more important, and we can all level up together. But at that point, you're absolutely empowered to ask for a raise, because you've asked for more responsibility. And responsibility and money don't always, but really should correlate, in the sense that the more in demand you are in your job, right? The more the phone is going to ring, or the more that your email is going to go, and the more difficult it is to leave the stress behind. That desires a certain kind of compensation as well, I feel, because if you're constantly on call or constantly the person solving problems, your employer has to think of it as, if this person is no longer here to solve these problems for me, what does that look like for me? And how many people, what kind of team, what kind of brigade do I have to put together to fix this problem myself?
Yeah, so this is why it's important to have like good problem solving skills, good time management skills, good foresight and planning and initiative. You put that together, then all of a sudden you are not just like a baseline competent, you are much more. And that is where real value comes. That's where like real savings for a company comes in. And this is what helps set you apart. But like I said before I was at Braun, this is the same kind of tips I gave myself and used to kind of go through the ranks of pay and responsibility at a lot of the other places I worked at. Just show you're valuable, show you can make things better, you can organize, you can plan, you can do what the other people around you seemingly be incapable of doing, and just push yourself beyond sort of that ceiling of baseline competence, and the whole world starts to change.
Well, that's it. And if I can encourage you to do any one thing today, it would be to use this time to be radically honest with yourself about where you are and what your skills are. And I mean radically honest when no one is looking. I mean, you can do this with a trusted friend or confidant if you want, or just a conversation in your own mind or on paper. I like to kind of get it out in writing, but just assessing your skills, assessing the responsibility levels, comparing it to that original job description that you signed up for, and seeing where you have added value, giving yourself a real, clear, on paper checkpoint of, here's how I'm lining up, here's how I'm meeting my obligations, and honestly, these are the ideas and the places that I'm not so strong, and this is where I need to work. And sometimes when you fully understand who it is you're trying to serve, your boss, what their priorities are, you can prioritize some of those skill sets that you need to develop to get to the place where they will go, oh, yes, I do value this. I do need this kind of person by my side in my organization to accomplish my objectives. So take the time to see where you line up and where you fall short from their point of view. I mean, and that's a hard thing to do, right? Because you can feel like you're doing a good job, but if their measuring stick is different, you have to learn to see it from their point of view and to see where the value is for them and how to focus all that extra energy, because this is extra effort, right? This is staying late after school kind of thing. This is the extra stuff that you're putting in to make sure that you're at that place where you're focusing on the things that will be rewarded. So that's how we saw becoming the best employee that you can, identifying if you're in a job that makes you happy, figuring out what it is about the day-to-day that can be improved, if it is something that you can improve, figuring out who you truly serve in your organization, if it's a boss, if it's a department, if it's a client, and figuring out how to give that individual or group of individuals what they need. Taking a look at your job description, taking an honest look at your skill set and seeing where the alignment is and where the misalignment is, and seeing what you need to do to level up. And finally, perhaps the hardest tip of all is to ask for that raise once you've proven that not only do you excel at your job, but you're ready and willing to take on more responsibility.
Yeah, it's you proving your value, highlighting your value, and essentially just asking them to compensate you for the value you are providing. If I can do this to my 700-pound boss with a severe anger management issue, I think you can do it too.
So it really is up to you. And it's no one else is going to take that initiative for you to make sure you're compensated fairly. So please, we encourage you. It's tough out there. Things are expensive. Do everything you can to level up and to make the contributions that will be valued by your employer in a way that will translate into increased financial success for you. If you need help with your financial planning, investment, and insurance needs, and you're in one of the provinces that we're licensed in, feel free to find us at Braun Financial, braunfinancial.com. Until next time, take care.
And where's my stapler?